Hello, how are you,
Hello.
Christopher Michael?
Oh, I'm doing really, really good. The sun is out here and I feel amazing. How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm excited about welcoming you to Dynamic Conversations. And let me
Thank you.
tell you a little bit about Dynamic Conversations. Dynamic, is the word for what I do in my day-to-day life, because it means powerful internal force. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
conscious force. It means progress. It means evolution. It means movement. It means growth. And someone who is dynamic is always growing, learning, and evolving. And that's who I invite to do a dynamic conversation. And so we've been waiting a long time for this. Yes, welcome.
That's going to be so fun. Thank you. Thank you. I love
Welcome.
that word dynamic. I talk about this all the time when I talk to people about who they get to be. And we have this idea that who we are is like static. It's like the static idea of who we are, but we're human beings and we are dynamic just by nature. Like we're never gonna be the same.
Mhm.
Every day we're changing. Even from like the beginning, I was reading a book. This was so good, and it was talking about like the whole thing about being is a constant change. Like we started, the whole universe started as a single point and then it exploded. And then we have been changing since the beginning of time and we won't stop. So it's evolutions of who we are. We've always been dynamic.
Yes, it is so true. What do you think of static? Is there a part of us that can stay the same or likes to stay the same or wants to stay the same?
I think so for sure. I think staying the same feels safe, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't
Yes.
really want to change can be scary because it sort of presumes that the next thing will be different and then we won't know what we don't know.
Uh-huh,
And then so
unfamiliar.
yeah, like a change in job could be very scary, a change in wardrobe. I also do hair, so changing your hairstyle or your hair color is very scary. So I think staying the same and being static feels safe, but it's the thing that also has us feel stuck. So
Mhm.
we want change. We thrive, like we desperately are asking for it, right? The world right now is in a rapid state of change. And but the act of actually changing still feels scary. So how do we reconcile?
Mhm. You're so juicy to talk to because we dove in immediately, right? We dove in
Yeah.
immediately, and I haven't even introduced you yet. So let me do that really
Hi.
quickly, and we're going to completely jump back into what you're saying, especially the state of the world and the gifts that you're bringing into this time. So let me just say a little bit about you, Christopher, and I'm going to read it here because I had to take down a bunch of stuff. So Christopher Michael is a visionary coach. I love that, who's been igniting self discovery and empowering individuals for over 20 years. It's not just now. With a background as a talented hairstylist, which of course makes sense. You and I are similar in that we work with people who sit in our chairs. I love that.
Yeah.
Christopher has honed his skills in building deep personal connections with his clients, but he felt a calling to go deeper to help others tap into their own inner power. Christopher knows that language, we're going to talk about this, is a
Mhm.
powerful tool that not only describes our experiences, but shapes them. He's a master at using this knowledge to understand himself, and now, as a certified coach, he's on a mission to help others do the same. So, unleashing your full potential is your thing, but also what you like to do for others. Um,
Yeah.
let's talk about language. Let's jump right back in because basically
Mm.
the word dynamic turns you on
Yeah.
compared to the word static. So let's talk about language a little bit here and your use of language when you're coaching,
Mhm.
Christopher.
So what I hear So I did some training in communication, and it's really where the juiciness of what I do kind of came alive for me when I realized that the way that we talk about and describe our situations and our circumstances, it it like is a covert way to get agreement so we can stay there, but it keeps it cemented. It keeps it very real. So we keep talking about the thing that we don't like, right? Even when we're setting our goals, we hear it in language. I want more of this. I want less of that. And when I hear the words more and less, I automatically am clued into what you have right now is not enough or it's too much. And so if you're creating in a sense that you're trying to get to a place that is different from, and you view it as more or less, they will always be in relationship to the thing you're getting away from. So it keeps the resistance of the thing you want to change alive and front and center.
That's subtle.
Um, it's subtle, and we don't even
It's subtle.
hear it really.
Almost like having a handbrake on. It's sort of, you're still driving, but it's right there to feel sort of this resistance if you're asking for more or less. So what do you recommend then in terms of using language with that example?
With that example, like let's say the example is I want to make more money, right? So now we're in relationship to how much money you're currently making. And what you're trying to do is make more than right now. So everything you do and how the world occurs is in relationship to the thing you don't currently want, how much money you're making right now. So what I would offer to people that I work with is let's just get really clear about what do you want to make? So instead of saying I want to make more money, say I want to make $75,000 a year. And so now you're creating from nothing. It's not in relationship to what you don't want. You're going from where you are, which matters, but in the creation of it, it doesn't. So if you want to make $75,000, who would you have to become to make $75,000? Not, and this is where it gets really interesting, is to look at that goal. What is it going to take to make $75,000? Who would I have to be to make $75,000? It opens up a whole other world of possibility rather than what do I have to change about myself right now or my circumstances to make more money than I'm currently making?
Oh my gosh,
Does that
you're
help?
popping, yes, you're popping so many things. So one, the first way of doing it feels comparative. Like there's something about, I want to make more than what I'm making now. But comparative in this timeline is what you're saying. The moment we say, I want to make $75,000, instead of comparing it to where you are now, is this accurate, Christopher? It actually, the way that I'm thinking about it, it immediately catapults you into a new timeline, into a new possibility of self. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it essentially interrupts the already ongoing narrative that you're living in that has caused you to get to this point of that timeline, making what you're making now. But your experience as a person is like, I don't want to be making that. That's not enough. And so you set a new goal. I want to make more. And you're like, well, okay, but you're still living in the timeline of not enough.
Back and forth
So you
here.
interrupt it and you jump over, like you said, I love that, to another possibility. I want to make X, which is clear and not related to what you don't want. I want to make this. Who would I have to become to do this?
Who would I have to become? It's almost like a non-prejudice question. It's not laden with past or future on this timeline. It's like, what possibilities open before me over here?
Yes.
Christopher, talk to me about interrupting, because let's nerd out on language, because That's a word you use a lot, and you describe yourself as an interrupter. Say
Mhm.
more about that. I like it.
Um, I mean, when I was younger, my friends would always say, like, you're such a devil's advocate. And you know the phrase devil's advocate. Like, I'm always just going to point out the opposing viewpoint just to get like a, I think the conversation becomes more dynamic when you're talking about both sides, right? And what I see a lot now is that we are in this sort of cancel culture that we're in. We are aligning with the people that think like us, and we are canceling the people that don't. And what we see is that now we have a very divided country, politically, religiously, sexually, like all of the divide that's there. So an interruption of that conversation would be to stop dividing, to stop resisting. That's the interruption. And allow yourself just for a second to sit in the conversation that you may disagree with, because you also might learn something, not just about the topic, but about the person. And I did this for years with clients in my chair. If we disagreed politically, they always said like the three things you should never talk about. I mean, I don't know if this is common, but I was raised, you never talk about sex, you never talk about religion, you never talk about politics. And those became my three favorite conversations to have in the chair. And it immediately deepened my relationships with those clients because I interrupted the expectation that we should just disagree. Like, you're a Christian, I'm not a Christian. You're a Democrat, I'm not a Democrat. Like, there's a resistance. And so the expectation is that people will just resist if we talk about it. But I'm like, oh, tell me why. Tell me what drew you to that religion. Or like, were you raised Christian, or were your were your parents Democrats? Or like, how did you get to be this? Why is this who you are? And it creates a safety for people to open up, and there's no judgment in it. I'm just genuinely curious about it. So what I'm interrupting is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm interrupting really the expectation that there should be resistance. And so what I see also going on in the world right
Yeah, the
now is,
assumption, the assumption. Mhm.
yeah, that there's a lot of resistance, and rightfully so. There's a lot of things that I would like to see different. And of course, it plays out on social media, right? Like, this legislation passes, and then this other group of people talks about how bad and wrong and damaging it is, while the other group of people is saying, no, this is exactly what we need. And so now there's resistance, hate, divide, all of that stuff. But we're trying to assert the way that we want the world to be. That's the resistance, because you're resisting the way that it is. To interrupt it is to not resist it and be like, oh, tell me more about that. When we're asserting that the way that we view the world is better, there's another one, better than, worse than, always in relationship to current circumstance, that we know better, you're implying that they don't know as much. And so there's already a resistance that people feel, and then the resistance creates more resistance because now they feel criticized. And then you're doing the very thing that you're actually resisting, right? Like, you're trying to tell me how to live my life, and I don't like that. I think it's wrong. So I'm going to tell you how to live your life. I see it play out all day, every day on
Yes,
social media. And I
yes.
think this isn't effective. How do we interrupt it? And, growing up gay, being an openly gay man for 25 years now, I think I came up forever ago. um, I've seen it. I've seen it play out like in same-sex marriage. I've seen it play out in gay adoption. Um, now we see it play out in trans rights and don't say gay bills, and there's still the resistance. And I really want to interrupt it, because I think we can rise above it the moment we pause and try to get on the other side to understand what really matters to the person, and we remove all of those labels and those restrictions and those assumptions, and you get to the human level. you might find that you actually agree fundamentally on what you're both talking about, but you can't get to that point until you stop resisting.
All right, I'm going to pause you right there because there's so much juiciness in what you said. The place where we're completely aligned is with, and I would call it, I love the metaphor and the visual of you talking to people in your chair, because I see this as the time to bring people to the table, bringing people around the table, right? That's how I'm picturing what you're saying. But it also sounds like what you're saying is the interruption is actually the asking questions and the listening. That is what you're saying is the powerful interruption, as opposed to just coming to the table and telling each other what you believe in. What you're doing is saying, how'd you get here? At the table, in the chair. How did you get here? How did you become who you are? Why did you make those decisions? How did you get to this opinion? The interruption is questions and listening. Does that sound right? I mean, that's what you keep repeating here.
Yeah, there's something happening behind what we're witnessing, right? There's a whole thought process, a whole belief structure, a whole like potpourri of past experiences, both bad and good, that got this person here. And how can we just get curious? So yeah, I love that. Curiosity is the ultimate interrupter.
Interruption. Beautiful, beautiful. Exactly. Just asking gives it the space. All of a sudden, there's this bubble around this discussion. All of a sudden, it creates this bubble around this discussion within which the person can emerge with story. Who are you? How did you get here?
What matters to you? What are you afraid of? Like those are such human questions, right? When we have these conversations and like you said, like that resistance, right? There's probably a fear that's like, I don't want this to happen but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about legislation, but that's not really the conversation. I don't think. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm alone in this, but I think the conversation is deeper than the topic that we're talking about. And asking questions to get deeper into the conversation can start to expose that, and then it interrupts the mainstream conversation.
Well, and disarms it. Because I can imagine that the moment that you start asking me those questions, like, how did you get here? Why does that attract you? Why does that legislation, how does this connect to who you are? And where did you make that decision? What matters to you is such a beautiful question, right? Immediately, I'm disarmed. Immediately, I'm being asked to reveal, to share.
Yeah. And in a way that's so safe, right? Because you can tell me what matters and what you're afraid of, and I can just receive it as you're just another human being who has your own set of experiences that brought you to this point, in the same way that I am, that brought me to my point. And none of it's like, it doesn't make you more than or less than. It just, now we're connected on a human level and we can talk about the human experience. This is why this matters to me. This is really what I'm afraid of if this happens.
Yeah, and I'm really loving, if we backtrack a little bit, I really love that you said, because you're right, everyone always says don't talk about politics, sex, or religion. And for you to say boldly, no, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. The reason why we don't talk about it is because there is an assumption of war. There is an assumption of battle. And who wants to go into battle? Who wants to fight, right? In terms of going to get your hair cut, for example, or going to a coaching session. But if that assumption is debunked and it's based on someone being curious about your religion, your sexuality, and your politics, what an opening, what a portal, into humanity.
Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's beautiful. Well, let's talk about what matters to you. Let's talk about, because you do talk about being a gay man, and obviously, if you came out, what, 24 years ago?
Yeah, I was 18. I'm 43 now. So what is that? Yeah,
Yeah.
25 years ago.
Wow, some boldness there, huh? Some
Hmm.
boldness there. Although I feel like once you come out, you're always coming out in any place, right? It's isn't coming out just an eternal story wherever you are, whatever group it's an always coming out. Do you get what I'm saying there, Krista?
Totally.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
What do you
We're always.
understand by that?
I mean, the moment I said the words to my friend, I'm gay,
Mhm.
it was an experience of like, it was a complete emotional release, right? I had finally said the thing that I didn't want to say for so long, and it was just safe and it was open. And I got to like experience all the emotion that was attached to, I can't be this person because what if people don't like me or whatever. And you're so right. Since then, it has been a constant coming out. Like, okay, so now I mean, I always was, but now people know me as a gay man. And what does that mean? What does it mean to me? What do gay men do? What do gay men like? Where do gay men go? What do they wear? How do they dress? All of these things. And now I'm trying to fit into what being a gay man is. And the older I get and the more that I meet other people and hear their coming out stories, I realize that it doesn't, you can't define it. There's no definition for what gay man is, unless you're talking about like it is a biological male who has, I mean, you don't even have to, who is attracted to the same sex. I mean, I don't even that definition is kind of nebulous, right? But you kind of come out over and over again to discover more about who you are, and that's what really matters. Because for so long, and I think this is true for most of us, is that there's this inner monologue really about not being good enough or not being worthy or not being lovable. It's just a enoughness, right? Is my meanness enough for people? um and I don't even know if anybody can really answer that question except us, right? So if I asked you, Claudia, am I enough? And you said, yes, of course you are. If I don't believe it, I would be like, yeah, you're just saying that to be nice, right? We see this all the time. It doesn't matter what anybody else tells us, it just matters what we tell ourselves. So in the process of all these coming out, these evolutions of self, as we become more and more who we are, we get more confident, more peaceful, we have more fun in our lives, we meet more people, we do more things, we potentially make more money if that's really like your goal. But you could also make less money and actually be more happy. So you're constantly, the coming out process is about discovering who the hell you are, coming out as a hairstylist or coming out as a retired hairstylist or coming out as an ex-smoker or coming out as somebody who tried almost every party drug on the planet when he was in his 20s, right? There's all these things, and we're afraid to come out and share that with other people. But then that first person that says, you know what, me too, and you're like, really? Humanity, now we're connected. Now I get, like,
Yes.
I just shared this thing, I came out about this thing, and I'm connected. um yes, I mean, that's a lot of thoughts about coming out. I could go on and on about that.
Yes, yes. Actually, so I have two places. One is, it sounds like, I'm writing that book, Humanity 101, and I think you were the first one to purchase the pre-order, and I absolutely love it. So let's talk a little bit about, there's two things that I want to tap into right now. So one is, it sounds like your idea when you say that's humanity what you're saying is this a priori or like base level experience or foundational level experience of us being connected and possibly even similar, that our
Mhm,
sameness matters as
mhm.
a foundation, the sameness in that we as humans have similar experiences and emotional experiences or life experiences. Is that accurate? What do you mean by humanity? Like, look, we're reaching our humanity. What do you mean by that?
When I talk about humanity, I'm always thinking about like, well, that makes sense. I mean, it's just like the human condition, right? Like the human condition.
Mhm.
I think about the biology. I mean, my brain goes all the way back to like evolution, right? Like, what was the function of any species really? Is just to like survive, right? To continue surviving, survive. And we do that, and over time, we see we've survived to acclimate to our conditions as they acclimated to us. It was a symbiotic relationship, but the human condition is always about survival. And so when you can get to that, if you're trying to survive, it presumes that there's an inherent danger, which would be death. And way back when, it was probably like a saber-toothed tiger, right? Like literal death. But now it's like a dislike on a Facebook comment, or it's a it's a mean or nasty comment on an Instagram post. Like that's not really survival, but the human experience of it, the humanity of it is that regardless of whether you're gay or straight or black or white or Asian or tall or short or fat or skinny, whatever, the human experience of that is still, am I going to survive that ridicule? There's a human element to it. And if we erase all of those labels and connect on the human level, then we can start to deepen our connections, and we can start to, I think, quite literally change the world. But it takes us first to recognize our own humanity. And it's not like, and I don't use the word humanity to be like, it's this like unobtainable gem. It's this thing that we walk around with. It's the subtle body language when you walk past somebody because you're thinking, that feels shifty or whatever, right? That sense of fear is humanity. Or like meeting somebody for the first time and feeling like instantly connected, like I've known you for years. That's humanity. That connection on a human level that has nothing to do with sexuality or politics or labels of any kind. That's when I talk about humanity, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, very good. Because you do talk about reaching or connecting at a human level, right? Based on our humanity. So that segues into the other piece of that I wanted to talk to you about, which is this idea of labels. Let's talk about the idea of labels, and let's start with you. So you came out at 18 as a gay
Mhm.
man, and that was necessary, especially let's say 80s, 90s. Before, it's always been necessary, but that was a time where it really was a self-authenticating, a self-empowering label. Would you agree
Mhm.
with that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So even labels have an evolution. And I think that's what you talk about. So let's jump in, and let's jump in with you and the evolution for you first.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I love that when I came out at 18, it was for the first 18 years of my life. Actually, I mean, it wasn't the full 18, right? There were several years prior to 18 that I was grappling with the idea of homosexuality. Because is that me? Is that what I'm feeling? All of that stuff. And so there was a resistance to the label, I'm gay. That was the label. Gay was the label. And I experienced a lot of like inner turmoil about that. And people didn't really know. I was afraid that they suspected, but I didn't tell them. And so the label itself I was so afraid of, but the coming out was the choosing of it. I chose the label gay. So I chose it, and it was empowering because it was an emotion, it was a cathartic experience, really. And now, 25 years later, as I'm going through this, I realized like I have tried so many labels to even fit into the gay community. Right? Like I'm not a bear, I'm not an otter, I'm too old to be a twink, I'm too skinny to be a twunk. There's all of these labels and like subsets inside the gay community that didn't fit me. So I'm like, okay, so what is my label then? Where do I even fit in here? Even though I'm quite clearly gay, I know that, but gay doesn't really even define me. So then who am I? It's this
What
constant
do you
question
mean
of
by that? Gay doesn't even define you. Let's nuance that. What do you mean by that?
um well, when you hear about people, like when we talk about the gay community, when they talk about the gay community on media, on the news or whatever, there's this idea that there's something inherently wrong or righteous about it. And and I and yeah, it's a human equality conversation. But if you came up to me and you said, "Hi, my name's Claudia. It's so nice to meet you. Who are you?" I wouldn't say I'm gay. I would say I'm Christopher, right? My name's Christopher Michael. So that's Christopher Michael is also an identity, a label, right? Because it's my first and middle name. But gay, like it doesn't matter. My connection to you doesn't matter one bit. It's not dependent upon my sexuality. I think it's kind of interesting how we want to lock in on that. Like, right, like we don't go around talking about your sexuality on the news, but now it's just on public display.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I have obviously hundreds of gay friends, and I'm different from each and every one of them. So if I could be defined by gay, then wouldn't that definition be consistent for everybody if it was a definition? It becomes really more like an idea of what gay means to me. This is how I express as a gay man, but how you express as a gay man might be different. Or right, so it's not really a definition, it's just what do you say defines you? And I don't really want to go around having conversations about what I do in the bedroom, although I'm perfectly comfortable to do so. But what is the purpose of that conversation other than for you to just understand the physical activities of gay men in general, specifically mine? Seems
Right.
weird.
Well, it sounds like there was something so liberating and empowering about coming out and saying I'm gay. But that
Mhm.
over time, what it sounds like what you're describing is that it got more and more constricting as well. Like it actually became a place of non-liberation, of of limiting your choices, of becoming just one part of you. All of a sudden, that label is all of you when you're saying, wait, no, I'm all of this over here as well. Like, I don't know, I'm vegan, I'm Southern, I'm not Southern, I'm whatever.
Uh-huh.
Is that part of what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I do like to go out and I like to be social. And I also do like periods of sobriety, like dry January, right? And when that starts, people are like, oh, how could you do that? Where are you going to go? Like, how are you going to hang out at the bar? And to go to a gay bar, it's like a presumption that you should just probably drink a lot and have fun with your friends and watch drag queens. But I'm a gay man who would also rather go to a nice wine bar, sit and have a deep conversation. But that's just not typically what you see portrayed as what gay is in media. Or I have gay friends who don't drink at all. And so where do they go? They go to the bar anyway. They just don't drink. Or they don't go to gay bars because they don't like the meat marketness of gay bars. And
Mhm.
so when I start meeting more people, I start to realize that the idea of what it means to be gay in the mainstream conversation and the umbrella understanding is like we're party animals. We're probably going to be gym rats. We're going to be promiscuous. We all have open relationships. We dress sharp. We're overachievers. We're like, and I'm like this, but I'm also a mess who likes to wear sweatpants, who sometimes doesn't wash his face for 3 days. You know, like, I just want to interrupt that. And so I go to the bar and raggedy old clothes and be like, this is me.
Yes.
But yeah, it becomes a cage after a while. If you're trying to constantly fit yourself into what the world thinks it is to be gay, you lock yourself, your true essence, away from the world, and you don't even get to live your own life. And you didn't even define gay. So at what point, I guess, was it important for me to be able to start making my own choices about who I am? It I heard a poem that like spoke directly to me. I don't know if it was a poem, but it was a story called The Angel in the Marble. And this sculptor was given this giant hunk of marble, and this little boy asked him, "What are you going to do with that big rock?" And he said, "I'm not going to do anything with it. I am going to keep chipping away until I set the angel free." And then I realized what I got from that story is that there are parts of me that I'm wearing, kind of like clothes that don't belong to me. I put them on for the comfort of other people. And now it's my job, my responsibility to start chipping away at all the things that are not me so I can set myself free. And some of that was gay doesn't define me. I'm so much more dynamic than just gay. I'm I'm an empath. I'm an artist. I'm a singer. I'm an actor. I'm a dancer. I'm a reader. I'm a writer. Like I can choose any of these labels, and they're so much more interesting to talk about, don't you think, than just my gayness?
Yeah, and actually we keep sort of doing this beautiful sacred geometry movement here in this conversation, because it brings us back to being either static or dynamic, right? And that
Mhm.
it's possible that at one time the label gay was this beautiful explosion of liberation, and not only for you, for a
Mhm.
whole movement, for a globe. And there are places in the world that are still fighting for that freedom, right? We actually
Yes.
honor that. We honor that fully.
Yeah,
Send
I'm
good
here with you.
vibes that way. We send good vibes that way. And it's the beginning, though. It's the beginning of liberation. But what you're saying is that that is just constantly, beautifully unfolding as we are. And can we start to just, through choice, through sovereign choice, just pick and choose as we go? It's almost like what's the most liberating choice we can make is to stay dynamic.
Hmm.
Can we stay dynamic in our labels, right? Including in a relationship, right, Christopher? I always say, like, who I was then, who I was in my 20s, who I was choosing in my 20s,
Yes. Who
right?
I was choosing to be then.
Right. To be, but also to be with was because of who I was at the time. And that's evolved. So who I choose to be now and to be with now has changed, and to allow that freedom of evolution, which is what you're describing. Um,
Hmm.
Christopher, let's say a little bit more about, because you're a coach, of course, to many people and to all types of people, and you're open to that, because you can connect with their humanity. But there is something you do want to work with gay men around, this idea of labels. It is part of what you do. And in fact, I just absolutely love, again, your play on words. You have
Yes.
a podcast that's called Hard of the Matter. And I love that, because you
Yes.
talk about hard things. Um,
Hmm.
let's let's open up. Let's talk about that. Your work with gay men.
Um, so there's always a thing, right? Like when you reach out for help, it's because there's some sort of a roadblock or there's like a stagnation or something. So when we work with people who are just starting to work with a coach or they chose a new coach or whatever, it's there's something between here and there that you can't quite traverse on your own. So you reach out for help. And what I realized I work with people a lot in, somebody had once called me a relationship coach, and I was like, I'm not a relationship coach. And then I was like, oh, maybe I am. Because my brain was like, relationship coaching. I don't want to talk to people about their relationships because I was thinking, who are you in a relationship with? But then as I started to explore that, I realized that we're always in relationship to others and we're always in relationship to other things. So, what is your relationship to money? What is your relationship to time? And while relationship coach still doesn't quite feel right to me as far as like language goes, right? Um, I do a lot of that. And primarily what I'm focused on is getting people, and you said this to me one time. You were like, what is it? How can you come home to you? And I think that was the key for me that really put me on this path of personal work, like truly personal work, Claudia. I don't know if you know this, but I had thought I'd been doing the work forever. And I realized that it wasn't. I was doing what I think the work was supposed to be because what I see a lot, but truly coming home to me and asking myself, who the hell am I? What do I want? What do I like? What can I do? Those are the questions. And so when I'm working with people, that's my mission, is to put them in touch with their most powerful resource, which is themselves. And to do that, it takes talking about relationships. It takes talking about stress at work. It takes talking about your dynamics with your parents or your siblings or your friends or your coworkers. All of these things are, they can either help you blossom in self-expression or they can stifle your self-expression. And what I want for people to understand mostly is that they always have a choice to express however they want. Sometimes, and this is a musical theater reference, sometimes the choice is mistaken, but the choosing is not. So, so when I say you always have a choice, what I hear back from a lot of people is, but it's easy for you to say because you're you. And I'm like, no, you can always choose, but the choosing doesn't always necessarily give you the result that you want. But the power to choose is so
Yes.
important to
Yes.
understand that that is really your power.
Yes.
Choose
Yes.
who you get to be. Choose how you show up. Choose your next action and then check in with yourself. Does this feel good or does this not feel good? Does this feel light? Does it feel heavy? Is this mine even? That was something I learned. As an empath, I realized there was a lot of stress around me and I'm a fixer. So I had to start questioning like, is the stress that I feel even mine? Or am I feeling somebody else's stress? And now I feel compelled to fix myself because I feel their stress. So knowing yourself, like coming home to yourself and tuning into who the hell am I, even to choose, is kind of the most beautiful work. And it's not always easy. I think social media makes it look like, oh yeah, it's like sunshine and rainbows, and you can do this and this and this, and then it's great. And then you're on like a path to enlightenment, but not always. Like you make a choice and then you learn, and then you make a choice and then you learn, but not choosing, that's where we get stuck. Not knowing that we even have a say in the matter, that we can be cause in the matter of our own lives rather than at the effect of how the world occurs to us.
Yes, I'm so resonating with this. I actually think that the freest human is the choosing human, like heaven on earth. When you hear me talking about heaven on earth, at the very
Mhm.
core of heaven on earth is choice across politics, country dynamics, emotional dynamics. When we are constantly choosing, we are the freest. So choice is at the center of freedom. That's why we vote, the freedom to vote, the freedom, it's that we are able to vote, to choose. So let me say one more thing really quickly that was so powerful that you were sharing, Christopher, this idea that you're working with people from their ability to, that it's not whether they're making a mistake in their choice, but you're highlighting that they're becoming their full sovereign self by choosing, by implementing this human skill, this free will, let's say. That seems, you seem to like highlight what's behind the scenes,
Mhm.
right? You
Yeah.
seem to like what's behind the scenes of your politics. What's behind the scenes of you wanting that legislation? What's behind that? You like that work of how did you get here? So it seems like you do really juicy work behind in the green room, not so much in what, right? And if we go with theater, not so much what the show is, what the cover story is, but what's happening here. The other thing you
Mhm.
said that I really like and that I would definitely tweak is this, that you are a coach. You're not a relationship coach, but you're a coach who focuses on relationships, like your relationship to money. I was thinking your relationship to self, your relationship to your inner child, your
Mhm.
relationship to your past, your relationship to your future. Um, I can see you interrupting that assumption of what relate, the relationship coach idea, but you do work with people and their relationships to people, places, and things, I guess.
Yeah.
So listen, we're slowly coming to the end of our dynamic conversation, but I do want to ask a last question here. So some of what you were talking about is how the external world views this labeling of gayness or of the gay male.
Mhm.
Talk to me, since you are appealing and working with gay men, um, and it's not your only place of coaching, but it is where you want to have these hard conversations, let's say. Talk a little bit about what you are feeling in terms of within the gay male environment, this idea of labels. Let's merge those concepts.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're making a lot of progress, like in our I want to say in our fight for equality, but even that, right? Like it should just be like it has to be a fight.
Mhm.
I think we're making a lot of progress, but I don't think it needs to necessarily be so hard. I don't know of any like let me see. So I mean it's such a tricky conversation, right? Because
It
I'm
is.
always worried that I'm going to like offend somebody by saying the wrong thing, right? Am I doing this right? That's a constant thing. Am I doing this wrong? Um,
Let me ask
I
it
think,
differently. Let me
yeah.
interrupt you and ask it differently, because I'm actually going to use, just so that it's coming out of your soul and heart, I'm going to use what you describe the way that you do it. Why does this matter to you? Why does the
Mm,
concept of labels, what does it feel like to you, Christopher, to have all of these labels within the gay community?
well, it feels confusing to me, first of all, because our entire well, I know when I work with people, and I know it's true for me, right? Like, where do I fit in? Do I even belong here? It's always a question of like, do I fit in? And now we've got label upon label and upon label. And it used to just be like gay. And then it was like LGBTQ, and then it was LGBTQIA, and it was LGBTQIA2 plus. And I think like it makes sense because people want to fit in, but do the labels actually get us closer to that? And how long does the damn acronym have to be before we actually get in touch with who we are as human beings? So like we're all human beings, regardless of whatever label. The label doesn't make you more or less human. It just is another way to describe who you are. But at the core of it, we're all human and nothing really gets to define us unless we agree to it. So are you choosing the label to fit into a group? I was when I came out because I wanted a place to belong. My family didn't know. I was the only gay person in my family. But there's always a silver lining. There's always a silver lining. And the moment we can stop allowing these labels to define who we get to be is, I think, the very moment that we can actually start to show up more purely as who we are, because there's no preconceived idea of what it means to be gay. And so what I want when I work with people, what I want the most is for them to get like, you can choose the label or not choose the label, wearing it or not wearing it, you're still you. So who's the human being that chooses the label or is not choosing the label? So now we strip away one layer of the conversation, and now we're talking about, why does that matter to you? Okay, it matters because of this. Now let's dig into that layer. Why does it matter that you have a community of gay people, right? Like we just keep going down that rabbit. Love that. And
Yes.
I love when they start to get it. When the men that I work with are like, I never actually thought about it like that. That's the point. Great. The more we can start thinking about the world as we think it is in a different, new way that lights us up, that brings us joy, that doesn't feel oppressive or restrictive in any way, I think we can start changing the trajectory of our own lives. And then we have a new place to get to and a new clarity for how to get there, and more confidence in who we get to be along the way.
I absolutely love what you're saying, because what you're saying is that the label can be the portal to deeper questioning, and those questioning being, why does this matter to you?
Mhm.
Right? The label can actually be soft and an entryway to keep having a deeper and deeper conversation towards coming home to self, right? And
Yes.
that's the work you want to do. So instead of the label being static, full circle, constricting as a survival mechanism, because what you were talking about is, where do I fit in, is a belonging, is a fear of not belonging. And therefore, if we don't belong, we are ostracized and therefore we die. Basically, it's a survival program that gets kicked open. So instead of the label being those things, the label becomes this beautiful, softening entryway to more questions as to, why does this matter to me, the individual? And that's the work that you're tinkering with in the green
Mhm.
room, more and more and more. It's
I love
beautiful.
the green room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, in the green room.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so true. And it is a portal. Now you're having me think, you've got me thinking about this in a whole new way, which is what I love. I want to be challenged like this. It is, and people, because I hear this a lot, right? Like there's nothing wrong with labels. And right, I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with them. They if they work for you and you choose them, fantastic. Oh, like more power, literally more power to you, because that's what gives you the power, the choice. It is you, it is aligned. I own it. I own it. But if the label's not working, could you just set it aside for a second and then discover where it came from? Why do I have this on now?
Mhm.
This is just another t-shirt. Does it fit? Does it not fit? Would it look better in a different color? Maybe I need a V-neck instead of a crew neck, you know? Like you get to curate your own life and your own label.
Yes, yes. And actually, sometimes when the label is working, that's a question too. It just sounds like your work is about using the labels, whether it's working like, why does I am gay works, I am twink works, I am bear works, or why doesn't it work, right? Either way,
Mhm.
it allows for deeper conversation, which we love.
Yes,
As a
yes.
co-empath, you know this. We love all that juicy, intimate conversations. Well, listen, we are at our time, but how about, can you tell us a little bit about how to be in touch with you?
Yes. So I'm mostly on Instagram. You can visit my website, www.cmichaelcoaching.com. My Instagram is at cmichaelcoaching. And so have a Facebook page, and I'm on LinkedIn. But I would like, yeah, drop me a line. Like if something in this conversation really spoke to you, or even, and I love this one too, even if you were like, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I love those conversations. So like, I would encourage anybody to just drop me a line and be like, I don't know that I agree with what you said about that, because that's the conversation I do want to
Mhm. Yes, and you will have them.
have.
You will
Yeah,
have the hard conversations, and I love that. Part of the matter, and they can find your podcast
heart of
maybe?
the matter. I haven't launched it yet, but yeah,
Okay, so we'll
it's
be looking
it is
out
a
for
play
that.
on words. Hmm.
Yes, yes, I love it. Thank you
Thank you
so
so much.
much. We're gonna put all of that underneath, you know how they say, look in the link or in the bio. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. These conversations need to be had in the chair, in the green room, around the table.
Hmm.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for creating this space for these conversations, because it's
Yes,
so important.
so important.
I love you.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
love you.
All right. Thank you.
Mwah. You're
Ciao.
welcome. Bye, darling.